Hello, welcome. We're almost done. We just have like 3 or so more chapters left and no more pre-tests. I've decided rest of the semester, I'm going to be nice and not make you take any pre-tests. There will be no final project. There will be no ultimate exam. You get the chapters done and you'll be done for the semester, which means we might get done a little bit early. Might. All right. Let's just go to today's wonderful lecture. And that is media theory and research. Now, this is more important than when the first time I taught from this book, because it's all about the research. And I've been including research in our business class, and it's really interesting. It helps you, doing the research to see who will buy something. Part of your job as a content creator is to create content for certain audiences. And a lot of you will do things that are directly commercial to get people to respond to messages. Matter of fact, that's what most people do in content creation. Of course, there's also entertainment, music, and other things, but most of you will be doing some kind of commercial creation at some point in your career, if not for most of your career. So the role of theory and research is systematic and scientific investigation and communication process and effects of this here stuff called media. Methodology is how research is carried out, either quantitative or qualitatively. Remember, I get my classes mixed up. I know I've talked about quantitative and qualitative in one of them. Quantitative is how many, and quality is like lifestyle, quality of life. And then there's a ton of media theories. I did my master's degree. That's what we spent a lot of our time on, media theories. And I am just going to be touching the surface of this. 19th, 20th century Europe and USA, dramatic sociological and political changes. We went from the industrial age that provided a backdrop for early theorizing on mass communications. You had the penny press, and average people could get more information because it was now available and they could afford it. The masses could get information. So the notion of the masses, the elite's rationale for why they should continue to rule, is because the masses don't know what they're talking about. We're some of that right now. This idea of any kind of voter change or suppression, or any kind of we need to be the ones in charge, not the other people, is a little bit of this. During debates about elitism, from which literacy was not required, film, for which literacy began to be recognized as an important medium of mass communications. And like I said, there are many theories. Why is it repeating like that? We have the transmission mode of communication, which you have probably seen before in one class or another, in a psychology class or in a speech class, high school, or if you've taken one on the college level. Describes communication as a one-way linear process, which traditional media is, if you'll recall, because there's really no way to get feedback from a printed newspaper. The only way to get feedback is either mail them a letter or a telephone call. So that's not real-time feedback. It's not considered in this model. Transmission of the message may be disrupted by environmental or semantic noise. Semantic has to do with language or logic. We might not understand the words. It might be in a different language. It might be a cultural thing, and I'll have more on that in just a little bit. Of course, environmental language, environmental noise can just be, the phone rings, the wind's blowing real hard, it starts raining, car horn, whatever. I mean, radio too loud, anything that can interrupt the message, either that you hear or that you or has to do with your understanding. So I made this little thing here. Was I took that picture from someone else, but I put the words in. You got the sender and the receiver in this basic theory of communication. And you perhaps all have played with string phones. They can't hear each other because the string's not tight. So that would be the noise. That would be the interference between their actually communicating. So the operation of telephone can explain this. The sender is the part of the telephone the person speaks into. The channel is the telephone itself. This is actually the more elaborate Shannon-Weaver version of the same theory we'll get to in a second. But anyway, you can pretty much see there's a sender. The message is whatever the sender is saying, and the receiver can either understand it or not understand it. So for real communication to happen, the message must be received and decoded and understood. Shannon and Weaver model of communications put some more points in this. Let me go right here. So you got the information source, and you got the transmitter. So the source is the person, the transmitter is the device. Then there's there could be interference noise, either the call doesn't go through. Like I said, there's environmental noise, or you don't understand the language or the phrasing. Then there's a receiver, which is the device upon which they get it, and then the message, which is then decoded and responded by the destination, which is the receiver. And in new media, we can get instant feedback if we'll open up the comment section of whatever it is we are posting. So this is basic communication. And I just explained all that. All right, the goal of communication is understanding. Anything that interferes with understanding is called noise. And some kind of communication noises include psychological noise, bad mood, attitude toward the messenger or the message. We got a lot of this right now. People just don't want to believe stuff because they don't like it. Not because it's true or false or whatever, it's because they don't like it. People are ignoring facts just because the coronavirus can kill you, and the vaccine can stop that from happening in 99% of the people. There are people who refuse to believe this fact. If you're one of them, you're simply wrong. It's been proven. But we live in a society that doesn't want to hear messages they don't agree with for political, ideological reasons mostly. Or you can just be in a bad mood. Don't want to hear it. Physical noise, bad connection, smudged ink that's printed, loud background noise. Physiological noise. You're hungry, you got a headache, you're in pain. Somatic, like I said earlier, things that you don't understand because of mispronounced words, misunderstood words, different language, cultural meaning of words and phrases. Okay, so here's the simplified version of this that maybe I should have started out with. Another theory of mass communication is positivism. It's a view that social phenomena such as human social behavior, how society struggles, ought to be studied using only the methods of natural sciences. In other words, we ought to use science totally and completely to understand communication. So positivism is a view about the appropriate methodology of social science, emphasizing empirical observation, and empirical means based on concerned with or verifiable by observation. It's science. So positivism, science is the only valid knowledge, fact is the objective of knowledge, and philosophy does not possess a method different from science. The task of philosophy is to find the general principles common to all sciences and use these principles as guides to human conduct and the basis for social organization. In other words, you do a little research, you figure out the facts. Well, Positivism denies intuition, prior reasoning, theological or metaphysical knowledge. You can't really scientifically quantify the theological or the metaphysical. Maybe you can a little bit with intuition and of course what she thought, earlier belief. So post-positivism it's a view of media research that agrees largely with positivism, but acknowledges that scientific inquiry may not help us understand certain aspects of life. I find this incredibly silly on the surface. And I'll explain that in a little bit. Then you got critical theory, which is influenced by communism, actually Marxism, because Karl Marx was a big promoter of this. It doesn't make it wrong. I think communism is a horrible system of government, but Karl Marx was a great thinker, and of course he's had a big influence on history. And his notions of ideology, exploitation, capitalism, and the economy aren't all wrong. Sometimes people you disagree with do get some points correct. Now, I am not at all a fan of Marxism or communism. I am a capitalist. I think money is good, and the economy is good. But he did feel like, and other critical theorists, that positivism researches, he criticized them for applying physical science research methods inappropriately to human behavior. They did not agree that certain statistical techniques and enough research can uncover various natural laws of society and behavior. They also felt like there's human nature that you can't really, it's hard to research, you just kind of know it. And there are certain natural laws. And they also believe that scientists could tilt and, excuse me, bias the research with the way they question. And that is true. That can be done. In polling, talked about that, I think, earlier. In polling, you have research bias. When you're trying to get an answer, we'll talk about that some in the next chapter or two, where you ask a question in a way where you'll get the answer you want. And people conduct those kind of polls so that they can use them in their own advertising. And scientists can sometimes be slaves to the facts. So yeah, science is not perfect, but at the same time, you just can't conduct research without some rules and some science applied to it. These theorists, critical theorists, see the drive to predict and better control society as one more form of oppression. This is where Marx really used this. He says that when we study this, and we study it scientifically, to try to predict and control society, we're going to use that information to oppress it. Now, that has been done. It can be done. But it's also used every day to figure out what people will buy and what people will watch and listen to. It's used every day. It's used every time you go on the computer. When you look on any site and they follow where you go. If you allow them to do so, of course, we have more and more options to opt out of some of this. There are people doing research on you every moment to see your buying habits. So these theories of mass communication are very important to them, and they're more and more important. And there are good, non-evasive ways to get the information you need. And it's going to be an important part of what you do. The cultural industry is also a negative idea that, by negative, I don't mean necessarily wrong. I just mean it's kind of a downer. It's a term used to describe how popular culture in a capitalist society functions like an industry in producing standardized products and produce standardized people. In ideology, there is a political argument that the cultural industry propagates an ideology that maintains the status quo and keeps the powerful in power. that is true. But the communist governments weren't any better at keeping this from happening than any other form of government. But of course, we don't live in a communist nation. I know a lot of people feel like we're going to become communists. They're using that the Cold War has been over since what, 1989? And the communist nations in this world either have become super rich like China or trying to find a way to be relevant like Russia, or dirt poor like North Korea or Cuba. So communism has failed, and except in China, and that's because they decided they would be communist and rich. So there are people who will use information for their own ends and their own good, and not care about the good of the public in general. That's always been true. That was true in Rome. That's been true in every empire. It's true in this country. There's also people who use information to entertain people and to honestly try to reach their audience, to sell their products. So it's not all bad. And research is a good thing. It can be used for bad, but it can also be used for great good. Ritual theory of communication is associated with critical theory. And as this scholar said, communication is a symbolic process whereby reality is produced, maintained, and repaired and transformed. So we do have our rituals in communication. Church services are ritual forms of communication. Club meetings, your bowling league, if you're in a bowling league. I don't think many people your age are in bowling leagues, but if you're in a bowling league, that's a ritual. There's certain things that and ways of communicating and things that you do in those situations. Social life is more than power or trade. It also includes the sharing of this or that experience, the religious ideas, personal values and sentiments and intellectual notions. All of this affects the meaning of the message. You got cultural studies, interdisciplinary framework for studying communications that rejects the scientific approach, while investigating role of culture in creating and maintaining social relations. Let me read this again. Cultural studies, interdisciplinary framework for studying communication that rejects scientific approach while investigating role of culture in creating and maintaining social relations and systems of power, which I don't understand how you can do this without some scientific approach, personally. Different cultures attach different meanings to words, symbols, and forms of communication, and it is usually controlled by those with power and money. So here's the difference. You got folks that want to use a scientific method to study how we communicate with each other. And you got other folks who feel like it cannot be made into an equation. They're both right. Human beings aren't that simple. Our cultures, among the people watching this and taking this class, we are all MAP students or faculty. We're all members of MAP, Media Arts Production. So we're part of one culture, and we do speak a lot of the same language. And there are things that we know and do because we know each other. We know how we do things in our program, in our department. And then we're all from South Carolina, or most of us, many of us, if not most. And there's some cultural things about that. Then you've got the folks that are African American, you got folks that are white, Asian, Native American, you name it, Latino, whatever, Latinx, of Spanish heritage. So there's some cultural things there. And there are people who are part of those groups that have no clue about their ethnical culture. So we're all different. even those of us who are supposed to be in the same group. So it is difficult to come up with a concise, precise communication theory. They're trying to find one theory of physics. And that makes more sense because you can do that with math. And what happens here on Earth is also the same physics that operates on the moon or in another galaxy. Of course, they discovered things we can't explain, and they're still working on that, but they want this unified, and that's a mathematical thing. Human nature is not necessarily easy to quantify or qualify. There are scientific methods to use. There's also cultural things to consider. So when I read this and when I studied it in my master's degree, I'm going, you got to do both. You got to look at the science, the psychology, and you got to look at just what people do in Utah as opposed to what they do in South Carolina. And that's not always easy to do with some kind of scientific equation. There's some interpretation going on there, like this. A carbonated sweetened beverage. In the North, you ask for pop. In the South, we want a soda or a Coke. And that also has to do with ethnic background sometimes. A group of people in the North, hey, you guys. In the South, hi, y'all. Sugar. What is sugar? Well, to Northerners, the stuff that you sweeten things with. It is for Southerners too, but it's also a kiss. Give me some sugar. People in the Bronx don't say, give me some sugar a lot. Of course, Def Leppard saying, pour your sugar on me, but that meant something else. You Google it. The lake. Now, this is very true around here. In the North, this can mean the Great Lakes, if you're close to one, or just a large body of water, something bigger than a pond. In the South, it's wherever you go swimming. We go in a lake. Now, of course, we got Lake Hartwell, but people live just near a large body of water, going to call a lake. We're in a lake, down by the river. Over in Elberton, that's what they always used to say. Fixing or fixing. In the North, that means repair something. Down here means you're about to do something. I'm fixing to eat me some crayfish. Now, I've had this happen to me. I've said, I'm fixing to go down there. What are you fixing? What are you fixing? So these are breakdowns of communication because of the cultural differences between people who are born and raised down here or have lived here a while and people who are born and raised up north and have lived there a while. Buggy. Up north, if they're going to think about some kind of horse-drawn cart. Down here's a shopping cart. Give us a buggy. Being ugly. This is something that my wife's family's from New Jersey, and her aunt has been watching my grandchildren, while we're at work. And the boys, 7 and 4, are always saying this. My brother's being ugly to me. And one day the 4-year-old said to my aunt, who was from Rahway, New Jersey, you're being ugly to me. And she thought he was calling her ugly, like you don't look nice. And she was kind of put back by that. Well, if you've been down here long enough, or you're from here, you know when someone's saying you're being ugly, that means you're misbehaving or being rude. If we want to call you ugly, we will say you are ugly. We want to call you unattractive. You're not being ugly. You are ugly. If you're misbehaving, you're being ugly. And bless your heart. Up north, it might be a way of saying something, showing sincerity or appreciation. Down here, it can mean that, but it can also mean, bless your heart, you're an idiot. We don't say that you're an idiot part. And some people say, aren't you precious? And they mean something totally. This is semantics. This is the noise. And we can study this. We can look at these kind of differences. But even among Southerners, some of you who were born and raised down here do not probably are looking at some of this, go, that's not the way we talk. That's not the way we do in my family or where I'm from. So media effects are a dominant concern in research that influence movie ratings, TV regulations, and advertising. They're always doing research to figure out what to show you, what to sell you, and how to regulate it. What's the effect it's having on society? And if we were in class, we would talk about this a little bit. Do you think media affects us negatively? And I'm sure your knee-jerk reaction is yes. And my knee-jerk reaction is it affects us negatively and it affects us positively. It depends on what we do with it and what we intake. It's like food. If all you eat are donuts and ice cream, you're probably not going to be skinny. If you eat good foods and exercise, you'll probably have better health. So does food affect you positively or negatively? It can do either. It depends on what you spend all your time doing. An occasional donut won't hurt you. A lot of donuts will. So the occasional stupid movie, now this is not one, this is Edward G. Robinson, this was probably a good film. The occasional bad piece of media might not affect you very much. There has been some stuff, though, that can change people's hearts and minds. Some of that's propaganda. Propaganda is the regular dissemination, of belief, doctrine, cause, and information with the intent to mold public opinion. And it's usually not done with good intentions. It's usually based on an ideology when we use the term propaganda, because you could also say that the no smoking ads are propaganda, but they are meant to save lives. Stop smoking, don't die as quickly as you would. But then you see propaganda that's politically motivated or is motivated against people or certain groups. Usually involves total control of the transmission of information. So that's why we say it's usually a negative. We'll call it a public service announcement when it's something good and something voluntary. Propaganda often becomes involuntary. As a media creator, content creator, if we found our government being run by one group, they might tell us what to create and not create. It's happened in other countries. And there are people who are afraid it's going to happen here. And some of the people that are saying that it's going to happen here are the people who probably do it if they had the chance to do it. Never thought I'd say that out loud in this country. And also propaganda is often done without the audience knowing who's controlling the message. So a public service announcement, which is propaganda against smoking, in a way, they're going to say brought to you by the people against smoking. And it's not something they're making you do, they're suggesting it to you. Propaganda, you don't always know. It can come to you like fact, it can come to you like news. It's been used for good and ill, throughout the ages. Of course, we'll use it, our country uses it. This is propaganda. Now we know who's doing this, but this is propaganda from China, Mao Zedong. Everything's wonderful. Northern Korea, even though you're starving, everything's wonderful. This is American here. Freedom of speech is pre-screened by the media. That, of course, doesn't take into account that sometimes we have to screen out what things so we'll have time to show things. This is propaganda. If Clinton wins, Satan. If I win, Clinton wins. Jesus says, not if I can help it. Give me a break. Stand up and be counted. Any form of prejudice, discrimination, hatred, or violence is wrong. You can call this a form of propaganda. It doesn't seem to have a negative connotation. It doesn't seem to belittle anyone other than people who are being mean and nasty. But it could come from, I don't know who this group is. It could come from a group that will bring you in with a good message and then hit you with a more negative message. Is this propaganda or marketing? Or both? Now, if we were in class, we'd discuss it. Frankly, I think it was mostly marketing. It's a campaign poster that really has really influenced. What's the name of the guy that did this? He's done a lot of work. This art style has really influenced a lot of media since he came along. I think it's been used for propaganda, but it's advertising if you know who's sending the message, and not necessarily propaganda. So for the sake of our discussion here, we'll say propaganda is stuff that's meant to tell you there is no other way of thinking. This just says hope. It doesn't say follow our fearless leader, our beloved leader, like it would in North Korea. It's just a campaign promising hope. They all do. So can it be one or the other or both? We can make arguments for all of this, but I think it started out as marketing. President Obama was trying to get elected, so yeah, they're gonna put out positive messages and nice posters, and that one just happened to start a trend because that artist is really, really good. And I've seen some really cool things he's done besides that. And I wish I could remember his name right now. You got the hypothermic needle model, which was studied in World War I propaganda, used the metaphor of the hypodermic needle, and that passive audience in linear communication theory, where there's no feedback. It just comes from one source. And you just fill in the masses up with your information. It's also called the magic bullet theory. It claims media messages have profound, direct, and uniform impact on the public. I think there have been messages that have had that effect on certain groups of people. Like there's certain group of people that simply are not going to believe that Joe Biden won the election, no matter what proof you bring before them. And there's been nothing brought up that shows nothing. That's not somebody saying, I saw this, or I think this happened, or this is true. No one's brought anything up that shows any fraud in the fact that Joe Biden won the election. Now, some of you watching this may be part of the people that think I'm just spouting the left-wing agenda. No one's shown me anything. All I've seen are conspiracy theories with no proof. And I've watched people on television who say, I know we got proof, we're going to show you. And then you ask them, the reporter will ask them for the proof, and they'll say, I'm not going to give it to you. You're the reporter, you figure it out. If you got proof, give it to the guy or the woman. And I promise you, regardless of their left or right-wing agenda that you think they may or may not have, if it's a news story and it's going to get headlines and sell commercials, they're going to publish it. So we got some of this going on. And there are large groups of people that are allowing themselves to be controlled. And a lot of them are the ones that claim they aren't being controlled, that others are trying to control them. Well, if you can't see, if you can't make your own decisions, if you can't look at other evidence or consider other things. I'm gonna let you read this about the War of the Worlds. You've heard of this before. It was a radio broadcast based on H.G. Wells' novel. done by Orson Welles, the great actor, director, had a radio show. And he people thought it was that Mars was coming to invade the Earth, and people thought it was a newscast. So they did studies in 1950 to show the world studies were conducted in the 50s to show that children exposed to violent television programming were prone to commit acts of violence themselves. These studies demonstrated that media effects could be dramatic and did not produce a uniform response in the audience, but did not. So some people are affected and do copy what they see, but many do not. And thank God, because of all the violent TV and video games out there, there are some folks that are affected by it. I've got to pause because I am being invaded by my family. Pause this and pause this. So yeah, I can't record in my office or at home without there being some interruption. That's the way it is. Okay. There was this thing called the Bobo Clown doll studies in the 50s. And showed children who watched TV episodes that rewarded a violent person were more likely to punch the Bobo doll than children who saw episodes that punished. Let me go back. I read this wrong. Children who watched TV episodes that rewarded a violent person, were more likely to punch the Bobo doll than children who watched episodes that punished the violent person. So they were more likely to be violent themselves when they saw violence rewarded. Then some of those old Westerns and stuff in the 50s and 60s, man, some of those were, they didn't show a lot of blood, but they showed a lot of death. And he believed this aggression must explain three aspects: how aggression patterns of behaviors are developed, what provokes people to behave aggressively, and what determines whether they're going to continue to resort to an aggressive behavior pattern on future occasions. And he showed that children who alter their behavior by simply watching others, they will alter it. So yeah, that's true. People say it's how they're raised. That's a very important part, yes. But even children who are raised correctly can watch some stuff and see some things that can affect and influence them. The pain fund studies, which is mentioned in the book and will be on the test, concluded that children, depending on their backgrounds and characteristics, could be influenced by the same film. Contrary to original assumptions about largely negative effects, pain found research revealed that children could learn some positive lessons. So yeah, you show kids good stuff, they'll learn good stuff. You show them bad stuff, they can learn bad stuff. It's true. I mean, you have a kid that watches Mr. Rogers or Daniel Tiger all the time, as someone who plays violent video games. It's a very good chance that the person watching Daniel is going to be nicer. Not always, because Daniel's not the only factor, and the violent video games aren't the only factor. The limited effects model. This framework views media as a component in a much larger, more fundamental system of influences to which we're all subject. Institutions like family, religion, school have more influence on individual behavior and attitudes than media itself. And I think that's what I've been trying to say all along. The media definitely has an effect. It can have a positive, it can have a negative effect, but it's one thing that has an effect. And if a child is really super affected by a TV show that's violent, then that might be all they're doing. I'm going to let you read this yourself, because I think I've said this pretty much. And there were some senior citizens. This is, I think, very true. Senior citizens who watch more television are more inclined to stay at home, fearful of perceived dangers. And that's true. And I see that with relatives of mine. They hear about all this stuff on the news, actual news stories, and they become more afraid. It gives me pause to think about where I go and when I go. I have never been afraid much to walk around. I go to a big city to a conference, in New York, Chicago. I have found those places to be very nice and inviting. But some things have been happening lately. I am thinking maybe I should be a little more cautious. One notable and often discussed piece of cultivation theory is known as the mean and scary world syndrome, or mean world syndrome. And in a nutshell, heavy viewing of television associated with violence can lead people to believe that the world is a much more dangerous place than it actually is, with a serial killer, rapist, and pedophile lurking around every corner. And I think people do believe that. Some of it's racist, some of it's sexist toward men, because sometimes men can be accused of this stuff by just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Not to say that there aren't killers, rapists, and pedophiles lurking, but not around every corner. And I do think that too much of this, I added the words "and cable news" to this list, because I really think that people have become more afraid unnecessarily. I think we all should be concerned. There's a lot going on in our country that hasn't been going on. We should be aware, but we should also not give in to fear. Then you got the Pied Piper effect, which, if you've heard the story of the Pied Piper, where he led the children away from town when he didn't get paid for getting rid of the rats. The Pied Piper claims that television has become that, where people just follow it along. But what if, TV has gotten that rap as long as I can remember. But what about social media? See, TV's a one-way communication. There's no feedback. Social media will give you the negative message, and then somebody will back it up with another one until they've talked you into it. So if we were in class, we talk about this. This is something I think we are seeing a problem with now, the spiral of silence. And I find myself being guilty of this. My grandsons won't be coming here. I'll let you read more about this, but a lot of folks felt like it's derived from a German scholar's observation of behavior during the Nazi regime in Germany, 30s and 40s, where a lot of good people kept their mouths shut because they were afraid. They were afraid of being left out, being isolated. Due to the fear of being isolated, people may be reluctant to express their views publicly because they don't want to seem like they're a member of a minority. And third, people tend to have a sixth sense that helps them determine the majority opinion on subjects of general importance. In Germany, a lot of people looked away while their neighbors were taken to concentration camps. Neighbors who would not have wanted them to go to concentration camps. Not everybody in Germany was evil during World War II. A lot of people were complicitly guilty because they kept their mouths shut. This is happening now in good situations and not so good situations, in evil things and not so evil things. Put up on Facebook that you like a certain recording artist. How many people will troll you and tell you you're an idiot, that's trash, how can you like something like that? We'll take it down because we don't want to be isolated from our friends or our social group. So that's no big deal in a way. And I didn't take it down. I made a comment totally. A friend of mine got his picture in the paper and I posted it online and I said something about it. And then somebody goes on a rant about how the local newspaper can't be trusted, yada, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And I just ignored it and I left it there. But it might keep other people from responding. So that's not super evil in and of itself. But when we see people mistreated, when we see people hurt, harmed because of their race, creed, or color, and we don't say anything about it online or in public because we're afraid that people will make fun of us or hurt us, we're guilty of this. I've been guilty of this, and I doubt very many of you have not been guilty of it. You know, little kids are. They're so afraid of what their friends are going to say about them. Well, we need to stand up when things are wrong and say, I don't agree with this, regardless of what other people say. And learn to talk to each other about these things and not be afraid to offer different opinions. Have you ever not challenged a post on social media you found awful because you were afraid of the trolls? If you haven't, I think you're in the minority. The third person effect is a term that refers to a documented belief held by many people that mass communication has different and greater effects on others than on themselves. So this is something, you know, I earlier mentioned that some people don't think you can quantify this. This is something that can be quantified. They were able to find people who would say, no, I'm not affected by media. It doesn't affect me one little bit. Text other people. Other people, you know, they're fools. They'll do it, not me. This phenomenon has been linked to public opinion research. It's often studied through surveys, through survey research methods, because people will admit this. They'll even see it, they see it as a positive. But every one of us has been affected by a media message. We've all bought things because we saw the commercial. We've all done things because we saw someone else doing it, or we saw it in a TV show, or we went somewhere, or we liked something, or we changed an idea, or we were minimally affected because of something in the media, positive or negative. So I believe most people who say this are lying to themselves, if not to the researchers. Commercials will never affect my own judgment. They only affect other people, says everybody. Direct effects research has been discredited, yet television, movies, internet, video games are still blamed for violent and antisocial actions. Believing that audience has no will of its own is problematic. So, and measuring media exposure is difficult. These are criticisms of this research. Separating intertwined social, culture, and psychological and other factors to identify clear cause and effect explanations is difficult. Examining wrong dimension of communications process is possible. So these are the criticisms of research in general, and they are not without merit, but research can be done that will give us results that we can use. And it may not be results we want, but that's what you want. You want to do the research and you want to find out what's really happening. You don't want the results that you want if you're really doing research for the right reasons. If somebody has a product they want to sell, they want to know if they can sell it properly. I'm teaching my students.
I'm kind of scared.
Well, you need to go somewhere else to scare him. Thank you for shopping at Woodson. Anyway, that was my grandson. The people that don't want to believe that any kind of research is legitimate are not right, just like people who believe that their research can be totally 100% correct when it comes to communications, because we are dealing with human nature. There's some things about our physiology and psychology that can be quantified, but whether you like red or blue, I don't know if that can really be, you know, there might be a lot more to it than where you're born or who your family is or what you've been exposed to. Social culture constructionism emphasizes the idea that society is actively and creatively produced by human beings. Well, it is. They portray the world as made or invented rather than merely given or taken for granted. Social worlds are interpretive nets woven by individuals and groups. And this could be negative or positive. Postmodernism, research theory that is most aligned with ethical approach of moral relativism. Moral relativism is the view that moral judgments are true or false only relative to some particular standpoint. You know, we talked about this earlier, didn't we? With absolutes. Is something right or wrong always? Well, there can sometimes be instances where something that's usually wrong might be the right thing to do and vice versa. And it can also change depending on a person's standpoint or view, or with culture, or with time. Not saying it's right or wrong. Ethical relativism is a theory that holds that morality is relative to the norms of one's culture. This can be true. And I see when I read these, and I think I have a hard time believing that anybody believes any one of these completely is the only way to explain any of this. It seems to me that it takes a combination of these theories to explain human communication. So the theory that holds that morality is relative to the norms of one's culture, which means, you know, something's ethical based on how you were raised or the culture you're in. You know, in North Korea, Kim Jong-un can right now take a pistol and shoot anybody that he wants to get rid of them. He's the beloved leader. He's in total control. President Biden did that. He'd go to jail if he was caught. Yeah, I just played to some of your biases, didn't I? So I think I've explained that well enough. Pragmatism is a school of thought affirming truths found in actions that work and rejecting the possibility of overarching and purely objective notions of truth. In other words, going with what works, which is often a good thing, being a pragmatist. I'm going to go with what works. It's bad when you go along with something evil that works. And I've already talked about quantitative and qualitative research. And I'll let you read this yourself because I've already told you pretty much what this is. And if you read the book and you read these in general, you'll see that but there's some quantitative and qualitative. So qualitative has to do with like lifestyle research, and quantitative is where you got numbers. You're measuring numbers, you know, number of people that did this, that, or the other thing. Here's some other, and where you can work together with these. Like I said earlier, I think it's any kind of research you do like this, you're going to have to take a number of different measures and from different schools of thought here. That's why I said earlier that the critical communication theory was not without merit, even though it was championed by someone that I think was wrong, Karl Marx, because I do think that information can and has been used to oppress people. Media has and can be used to oppress people, but I also believe that it can and has been used for good and things in between. Just like everything in life, everything. Now, for those of us in media, and those of us who just want to do the right thing, and those of us who are trying to make a living and make good art and do good things, this research and these techniques are important to know because we want to know our audience. We want to know what they like and they dislike. We want to know what offends and doesn't offend them and when they need offending. I have mentioned many times, sometimes you just need to tell people what they don't want to hear because they need to hear it. That's what the news should do. So if you're mad at the news because you think they're telling you they're going against your beliefs, you might want to stop and think, is it because I don't like what they're saying, or is it false? Maybe it's true and I just don't like what they're saying. You got to consider all of that. So know your audience, and research will help you figure out who they are where they are, the likes, dislikes. Will they be interested in your message? Is it a broad or general audience? All of the different things that make us, like income. In one class, I asked students to figure out who could buy a Rolls Royce. And you're looking at people who bring in, like $1 million a year, and Rolls Royce doesn't advertise. But if you're trying to get a message to someone about, well, just today, Richard Branson flew in the first commercial space flight, first official commercial space flight. And I'm not sure anybody actually paid to be on it, but that costs lots of money right now. I think in my lifetime, it might come down to where it's affordable to people. So once they start advertising this, you're not going to see this ads for Virgin Galactic and Reader's Digest, which has an older, less affluent audience. You're going to see it advertised in places where rich people look, watch, and listen. Audiences create meaning. We talked about encoding and decoding already. Some of this is repeating what I've said already at the beginning of the lesson, and just just reinforces it. We've already talked about framing in this class, message framing. And ads, we do this. Someone wants to do an ad for a t-shirt. This is a t-shirt. This is an awesome t-shirt. You want to make it look wonderful and something to buy. It may just be a t-shirt, but to get people to buy it, how are you going to tell them? It's the frame. Is this a lie? No, that's just it. No, it is an awesome t-shirt. It's great. Is it the most awesome you ever? That's a little hyperbole, a little bit of puffery, but it may be a wonderful shirt. The belief that first-person shooter video games, ones that provide interactive and immersive action, cause gamers to act more violently in real life is an example of technological determinism. And the uses of gratification branch of research makes the claim that people use the media actively for their own purposes. This is what we are seeing today more than ever. People who watch Fox News and people who watch MSNBC exclusively don't believe the other network is telling the truth, whether they are or not. They are just taking whatever it is, the information, and they're using it for their own purposes. But there are also people in power. There are also people right now in power in the United States that are taking media activity and twisting it around to make it something to use to their audience. If Donald Trump did not like something, and still if he doesn't like something, he'll call it fake news, whether it was fake or not. And of course, people that are followers of his are going to believe him. Are they going to go to the original news source and check it out and see? Many of them will not. Some of them will, and see that Trump is just doing this users and gratifications form of communication, and he's good at it. And he's not the only one that's good at it. People, good, bad, and indifferent, have been good at it throughout the years. Reception analysis has been criticized. This is my wife. I'm nowhere near finished. So yeah, I guess I should stop and talk to you. Let me pull this over, stop share, and pause recording. All right. I know you want me to finish too, so let me get to it. I want to finish. All right. And move this over here. Reception analysis has been criticized for the active nature it describes to audiences, which you just need to know that a little bit. Information society is a term for society in which creation, distribution, The manipulation of information has become the most significant economic and cultural activity. And I don't know that we've become a total information society, but we're awfully darn close if we haven't. And the opposite of that would be like a farming, more primitive society. So are we, you can argue if we've become this total information society or not. Because see, there's a lot of, you're sitting there looking at your phones all the time. There's a lot of folks that don't. And there are other generations. The political economy of the media includes several domains, including journalism, broadcasting, ads, information, communication technology. A political economy approach analyzes the power relationships between politics, mediation, and economics. Just giving you some socio-historic frameworks here. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna let you read some of these because there may be a question on the test about them, so be aware of what they are. Agenda setting. We've talked about this a lot in this course, at least 3 times, 4 maybe, counting this one. You got public agenda setting, where the public determines the agenda for which stories will be important considered. You do that for yourself, by the way. Media agenda setting, which most people think is the media setting, choosing stories only because of their particular philosophical slant, either conservative or liberal, and which can be true and has been true. But it's also, as I say, more often than not, especially locally, based upon how much time do we have. We can't cover everything. I've noticed something recently. I've been buying the physical newspaper so I can do the crossword in it, because I don't like doing crosswords on my iPad. I'm old now and like to do crosswords. And I've noticed that the physical paper does not have as much information in it as it does online, because online has, you can put as much on there as you've got. You still have to ask yourself, will they look at it all? And you put it in an order that you think is important so people will see it and see your ads. Policy agenda setting, where both public media agendas influence decision-making of public policymakers. So we've talked about this a lot, and just reiterate your, refresh this in your memory and what this gentleman said. The press may not be successful. This is really a cool quote. The press may not be successful much of the time in telling people what to think, but it's stunningly successful in telling its readers what to think about. Even if they don't want you to, even if they're not trying to edit the news to fit their own beliefs, they're going to tell you what to think about just because we've got 30 minutes, we've got 45 minutes worth of news, we got to get rid of 15 minutes of news. So they're going to cut something out. And they may cut it out in a very, in a way that's very objective. But they're still very good at giving you what to think about. The digital divide, this is what I was mentioning earlier. The reason I say maybe we haven't gotten to a total information society, because there's a lot of folks who do not have access to computers and the internet. It's a lot. There's people, a lot of people in our Tri-County area where it's very difficult to get a internet connection because we live in a mountainous area, and the mountainous area makes it hard to lay cables and lines, and there's a lot of poor people typically in mountainous areas. Also a lot of incredibly rich people at some of these mountain subdivisions, and they don't have super great internet access often because of the physical limitations. So there's a digital divide in our area and around the world, especially in poorer countries. So I've mentioned some of this, and you read it. Rural Americans, and it could be a rich conclave of people, a subdivision built out in the country that's really, really nice, but they have no access. You know, it used to be people not too long ago said, I can't get cable service. And there's still a few places where that's true, because getting the cable to them where their house is very difficult. So imagine getting internet service. Or if you're in an area where the reception's poor because they haven't put a tower there yet. The Verizon has towers almost everywhere, but I still find dead spots. The across the road at the Clemson Forest, if you've ever driven through there, I have lost my signal a mile from campus. So anyway, rural Americans have consistently lower levels of broadband adoption and access. New research and media methods, the media research, new directions, focus on social media and activism and democracy. Big area of study now. The impact of time spent online for both children and adults. I think the amount spent online, the time spent online may have more of an impact on you than what you're actually reading. Investigation on the evolving role of the audience in an interactive communication environment. Examination of issues surrounding social networking sites, and research on effective video games. Cross-sectional studies that gather data over a specific point of time. So we got new areas to do research in, and I'll let you read all of this. Digital media research in business, organization, science. This is some of what we're talking about in our business class. How can we use this to sell more products, to reach more people, to spread our message, whatever it may be? And how does that affect the chain that builds the product or creates the message? I mean, you got suppliers and business relationships and customers and warehousing and all this stuff. So this all affects the whole chain of any kind of production. Longitudinal studies gathers data over a long period of time. That's usually the best way to do it. The longer you do the research, usually the better outcomes you'll have. And again, I'll let you read this yourself because I pretty much said it. All right. That is everything here. All you got to do is take the test and move on to the next chapter. So I'll talk to you later.